So let's talk about form attributes, the name attribute and the ID attribute. These two, they work together to provide, both individual uniqueness to a form field, to an input field, and to allow some similarity between form fields. So that's why both are needed, because they kind of work in coordination with each other in certain situations. So, like this picture we have on the screen, the driver's license number, right, is the unique identifier. And the name, right, the name input, this name could be anything we need it to be. We could have many different, like Robert. Robert as a name isn't unique at all. There might be, a million Roberts. And so this is the same way we're going to use the two attributes in order to make an input field both unique and also have the flexibility for it to have the same name if needed. So here, context matters. You simply need to take a little time, ask yourself a few questions, like think of an online calculator that we often use. We go to a website, we fill out a minimum amount of information to use that calculator. Well, in that instance, the way that you set up your user input fields they're not going to matter at all. Simply not going to matter. Versus if we're entering in lots of people at one time, or if we're entering something in for a database. In those instances, the name and ID for each input matters a great deal. Well, the ID matters a great deal. The name still will not matter. So here, let's take a look at some HTML code, some form code for name. Sorry about that. So over here on the left, this is what it looks like when you're naming your input field. And if it doesn't matter, right? If you're just taking an input, a simple input, and you're doing an action, the ID field can be the same as the username, right? Nothing's being stored. No distinction needs to be made each time. So let's take a look at when it does matter. So over here on the left, we have a simple username. The person enters the username field. It's named username and its ID is username. No big deal. But over here on the right, we're taking in the first username and the second username. We want to later be able to distinguish those input fields. So when we put together our attributes, name can be username, but ID, right, has been changed to user1. And what this allows us to do is to go back and pull that data later under user1. We can find out who user1 is. And down here, we're introducing a second user. So the ID for this will be user2. And we will continue to iterate that number, right? User 3, user 4, user 5, whatever type of numbering system, unique numbering system you want to set up is going to help you at a later date distinguish between each of those input fields. And notice the name, username can be the same in both, right? But that ID attribute needs to be unique when it matters. So you kind of have to think about this yourself, right? And just a quick Venn diagram, compare, contrast, the name attribute, it can be the same. It's not very important. In fact, when you're filling in usernames, we kind of don't want to identify ourselves that much. So same thing when we're naming our form fields. It's just not that important. ID, on the other hand, if you're saving to a database, if you're entering in unique people or groups or objects, then you need to form unique ID attribute names. And both work together to create the full identification for that user input field. So I hope this helps.